Hey, what's going on, everyone? Steven TheLaggyGamer here. Welcome to my Solosode for the month of October, for this little special that we're doing for the month, where we each kind of trying to put out some content each week for you guys, kind of celebrating the month of Halloween and horror games and all that jazz. So by this time, you would have already heard Alex return to Mother Base, his episode, his Solosode, really good mini-sode that we did on Echo Night Beyond. I hope you guys tuned in for those, but now it's my turn to kind of share some, I guess, Halloween horror memories and such in games, so that's what we're going to do. So here we go. I figured I would get things started off first and foremost just to say, I'm not a big Halloween person, at least for the longest time I hadn't been. When I was young, I'd get into it and want to do some trick-or-treating and stuff, get some candy. But until I gotten older, there had been a big lull where I could have cared less about Halloween. Now, I always really wanted to decorate for it, though. I always thought that would be cool, and when I got my own house, it'd be like nice to set some stuff up. But man, decorations and stuff can be expensive, and I haven't really invested into that. I'm more of a Christmas guy, so I'll put all my decorating to that. But growing up is something I was really into, just to get the candy. And getting older, I found like the holiday could be a little bit more fun, like if you want to go to Halloween parties and such. But the most joy I get out of it now is getting to take my kids trick-or-treating and let them go out. I have a lot of fun doing that and letting them get dressed up and just seeing the smiles on their faces when they light up and they get all this candy and all this good stuff. And it's a good time, especially in the community and area I'm in. It's just really nice being able to walk around the neighborhood and do that with my children and my family. So it's really neat. And this year, my son is planning on going as Mario Rabbit. So it's going to be an interesting costume to try to put together here. Mario costume with some rabbit ears on it, I guess. And we're going to try to make him some type of makeshift hand cannon arm to go with the costume. So we'll see what happens, if it turns out any good. If you guys follow me on Facebook and stuff, of course you'll see a picture of it probably. So that's pretty much how the season goes for me. I really look forward to each and every year trying to dive into some horror movies, though. And that's another thing. I'm not a big horror movie guy. It's not my genre. I think there's some of the dumbest movies out there, just trying to watch a group of teenagers or something try to survive a slasher. I just think it's retarded. I'm sorry, because anyone who could keep getting themselves in certain situations I just find laughable. And it just never makes any sense to me, but I understand why people get into it. But there are a few select movies that I'm really into. Like, I really like the older stuff. Angry Video Game Nerd. I would watch all his Cinemassacre movie reviews, and he's really into horror stuff. But a lot of the newer stuff I couldn't really get into, but the older stuff, as far as like the Hammer series with Frankensteins and the mummies and stuff, now that's the stuff that I like and I can get into. Those movies are just more than about killing people and guts being all over the place. It's actually got some really good story to it, so it's good stuff. And I actually own a lot of them on Blu-ray and the ones you can get on DVD. And it's been something that over time I've been trying to get those older ones. Other than that, there'd be some ABC Family back in the day. Certain TV stations would always put on like specials for the month of October, where they would release some movie every weekend or something. The classics like Hocus Pocus, I'd get all into that stuff, and I can still watch that to this day. Little corny movies like that. Just any type of Halloween specials, Halloween sitcom specials would always be really fun. But I was never one who was into the Freddy's, the Jasons, the Michael Myers. I'm not into any of that stuff because it's just not entertaining to me. a cheap, well, not cheap, but a movie that it's really corny, but for some reason I actually really do. And these two movies, I got to see what year they came out. Since I'm at the old computer here, one does kind of fall into that category of, I guess, a slasher movie. But it's something that, one of the movies I really liked growing up, kind of in my teenage years. When did it come out? 2001, yeah. Was 13 Ghosts. It's like movies like that, for some reason, I could get into it. It had a couple actors that I recognized. So it made me want to watch the movie. It's like, alright, I'll give this one a go. And it was pretty cool. Like, I really enjoyed the plot of that movie, going into this castle, or not this castle, this place where there's a ghost hunter. I think there was a psychic. They're like on a mission to just try to, I think they were trying to capture these spirits or something. I don't know what's going on, but it's been so long since I've seen it. But while they're exploring this place, I mean, they have a team of people with them, and there's these different type of ghosts that just start killing everybody off. And I thought that was really cool, just because of the area they were exploring and the different type of ghosts that were in it. And another movie that people are gonna just laugh, that I really enjoyed. Let's see which year this one came out. It was House on Haunted Hill, but not the old version. It was the remake that came out in 1999 that had Omar Epps, Chris Kattan, all those people in it. Jeffrey Rush, I think, I don't know, for some reason he just pulled off. If he just looked, no one can match Vincent Price, but man, he sure did like really look like him in that movie. Now this movie, again, not really well received, but for some reason these corny ones like this I could get into, and I would just have fun watching. Like, I could watch this one over and over and over, just seeing these people go into this haunted house on the hill and trying to make it through the night and getting paid if they could survive. It was just really cool. And again, it's been a long time since I'd seen this movie. I was a fan of Chris Kattan back in the day from Saturday Night Live and all the stuff that he did with Will Ferrell and Night at the Roxbury, one of my favorite movies all time. So seeing him in a different type of movie like that was pretty cool too. But other than that, I'm not really into, like I said, a lot of horror movies. I'm really, I think the closest thing these days, based on horror stuff, that I really enjoy is Supernatural. I love that show. I've seen every season up until, I think season 11 is on Netflix. It's been out. I haven't had time to watch it yet. I know it's been out for a few months, so I need to get on that. But every time the new season would come out on Netflix, I would binge watch that. Before it was even on Netflix, I actually owned the first 4 or 5 seasons on DVD. So I really, really just love that show. Sam and Dean going on their adventures, starting off with like this monster of the week type series, hunting it down, whether it be a werewolf, a vampire, or a changeling, anything. The show just, it was awesome. And it still is awesome to this day. Now the storylines kind of getting a little far stretched here now that they've I think they have surpassed their goal of seasons that they actually had planned for that show. Like, I don't think anyone expected it to continue to go on like it is today, but it has such a following and a fan base that they just keep making them. And I want to say, I don't think the episodes are that expensive to make, so with the viewership they're getting, I think they're doing just fine. And as long as, I guess, they have the storylines, they could keep on going, because the guys seem right on board to want to keep on making this stuff. So it's keeping me entertained. I know Dustin, I had told him about the show, and he actually did try to watch the first couple seasons, and I think he enjoyed it for the most part, but I don't think he's kept up with it really. But I never really hear anyone else talking about it for a show that seems to keep going on. A lot of people don't really ever talk about Supernatural, at least here with the group that I'm with. So if no one's seen it yet, feel free to turn on the old Netflix and you can binge watch a lot of episodes, because I think it's about 20 episodes per season. And again, it's got 11 seasons on there, so that's a lot of television that you can watch. Really funny, really cool action stuff, and really good storylines some of the seasons. Like I said, it could be dipping off a little bit now, but I mean, once you I didn't think there's a season where, I mean, you're pretty much going against the devil, so who else could you go against that competes with that? So but they've been able to think of stuff to keep on going, so it's kept me entertained. And that's about the closest thing to horror stuff that I'm watching these days, unless you want to count all the cheesy Resident Evil movies, because I still enjoy those. Just cheesy action movies, killing zombies, hacking people up, good time. I'm also into, like, they just showed a trailer for, there was a movie that was coming out, I think it's out now, called Snowman, based on Stephen King. It's a book with Michael Fassbender in it. Stuff like that I could watch too. Like, it's almost like a cop serial killer drama, but to me that would kind of classify under like a horror movie as well. So I can get into stuff like that and watch movies along that nature too. So if that ever comes out on Netflix or something, I'm not going to go to the theater and watch it, because I heard it was actually a really bad movie. But I'm still intrigued to give that one a go. But yeah, just not the real big movie guy. But for some reason, not being the big horror movie fan and stuff that I am, I sure do get into some survival horror games, and I have no idea why. Because again, I didn't grow up really liking scary movies or anything, so this attachment that I have with survival horror games or horror games of the such, or scary games, it always seemed kind of strange. And it all started, of course, with Resident Evil for me, and not the first one. It was Resident Evil 2. That was my first adventure into any type of survival horror atmosphere, and I think that's why it resonates so close to me, so close to my heart. Like, for years I have it as the #1 game of all time for me, even though mechanically, control wise, graphically, even story wise, there's no way it should be the #1 game. And I think I mentioned a few months back now that if I was to redo a list right now, it probably would not be my #1 game of all time anymore, because there's a lot of great stuff that I played since then that would probably take its place on the mantle now. Whether it's something From Software has put out, like in Bloodborne, or going back and reliving some of the classics that I didn't get to as I grew up, like Super Metroid. If anyone listened to our episode on trying to rank all the top games, like eliminating from the list, I forget what we called it, your childhood on blast episode, I wanted Metroid to win that just because I have such an attachment to it right now, and it did win it, and I just think it's one of the best series going. So if I was to compare Resident Evil 2 to something like that now, it'd be really tough. I'd really have to sit and think about it. But Resident Evil 2 is where it all started for me. I remember going to a pawn shop and trading in my Nintendo 64, because at that time I believe the PlayStation 1 had already come out. I want to confirm my stuff. Let's see, PlayStation 1, 95, the 64. It was 96. I want to say it was 96. Yeah, 96. So I traded in my 64, and I wanted to get this PlayStation 1. So that's what I did. Traded in, got the PS1, and the first game I got on the PlayStation 1 from the same pawn shop was Resident Evil 2. It's like, man, this is a double disc game. I'm going to play this and give it a try. My friend who lived up the street, on the street that I lived on, he actually had a PS1, and he had the original Resident Evil. So I never really played it, but I had seen him play it. So when I saw this second one, I was like, you know what? I'll give this one and get this one and give it a go. Now I can't tell you what year this actually happened, when I got this. Again, I have a horrible memory, so I apologize, but it's pretty much how it happened. Because I know Resident Evil 2 came out in 1998, so sometime after that. So I get Resident Evil 2, get to my house, start playing it, and I'm in love with it. Like, I remember the first time playing it, just trying to get through that opening scene after the crash, and there's all the zombies in front of you. It took me forever just to try to realize how to dodge those zombies there without getting, like, almost killed by the time you get to the police station. So I just remember that opening, the wreck, dodging those zombies and getting on the bus, or shooting my first couple zombies, walking to the gate, and then walking to the main entrance of the Raccoon City Police Department, and open the doors, and you hear those dun dun dun, dun, like the hallway music in that area. Resident Evil 2 just has so much music that sticks to my mind and resonates with me to this day, just because it created such a great atmosphere in that game. Like I said, first entering the police department and hearing that music was just so great. The save room theme, which I've always preached about on here, one of my favorite themes in any game, period. Just the way that you got that moment of comfort in that save room when I heard it, when playing through it the first time. Only I made one huge mistake when I got my PlayStation. Didn't get a memory card. So we're going back to having to, when I played this game, there would be times where I'm like, man, I would turn it off and not realize that I couldn't save it. So it'd just be playing the beginning a lot, over and over. Until I eventually tried leaving the system on, like doing that old trick. No memory cards, or just leave the system on if you can't save. So that's what I would try to do. Try to leave the PlayStation on, even through the night, and see if try to beat it that way. Now what would happen is initially I know I had the power go out on me almost once where it reset it, but on another occasion my mom, back in those days, like, she would go up there and like make sure our rooms were clean. If not, she'd straighten some stuff out, cleaning the room, and if she saw it on, she turned it off. Not that it was an issue of it using electricity or anything, but just because she knew it shouldn't be on. She was worried I was going to fry something up in the system, so she turned it off. Well, eventually, see, being young, it's not easy to just, especially if you're growing up poor, it's not easy to just say, hey mom, I need a memory card, can we go get one? No, that's not how it worked for me. Basically, it was either me trying to earn money on my own to try to go get that stuff, or I'm just not getting it unless it's Christmas time. So my friend, though, who had the original Resident Evil that I saw for his PS1, he actually had a memory card. So I was able to eventually borrow that memory card from him, so I could finally try to sit down, play through Resident Evil 2, and beat it. And that was one of the great experiences, because I love playing through single player games. Another thing I love to do is playing co-op games. Well, Resident Evil 2 is not co-op, but it was fun having friends there with me on occasions when I would play it sometimes. I remember one of my next door neighbors, Jeremy, he was over one day, and he was really getting into watching me play it. And I believe I've shared the story before. I just remember we were in the final area of the game at this point. It was in the lab. Got a new type of creature type down there and everything. And it was an eerie area. And I just remember us sitting there so focused on the TV. My door was shut. My sister came and hit on the door, and I literally almost crapped my pants. Like, I threw the controller. He jumped up out of the bed and fell on the floor. It was just one of those moments where I felt like my heart had stopped for a moment, because we were so focused and so intent on watching that television and what was going to happen, that when she banged on that door, it literally scared the crap out of us. So, to this day, that's one of the scariest moments I ever had in a game, and it wasn't because of the game. It was because of her, my sister, knocking on the door. But, it was just great memories with that game. I really loved it. It wasn't ever really scary. It's not too often I actually get scared by a game. It's just really the atmosphere in horror games that I like. And Resident Evil 2 really had a great one. And I guess that's something I should clarify. For me, it's all about the atmosphere in a game. If it's based in a survival horror-esque type of atmosphere, or genre, the atmosphere is what I'm looking for. The mood of the game. There have been some recent games that come out, and I'll probably get chewed out for this, but with the father of Resident Evil, Shinji Mikami, Evil Within, I did not like that game. The atmosphere was not there for me. It just felt like they were trying to do something different by showing us how gory they could get, or how grotesque they could get with a monster, or weird looking, instead of focusing on the smaller things like they did back in the day with Resident Evil. The way the music fits in with each level. It was just something about it that I just could not get into. Now that Evil Within 2 has come out, and I've seen some gameplay of it, it makes me want to go back and revisit Evil Within. Like, maybe it was just wrong place, wrong time. I should give it another go, because it is a game that has come out this generation that people do regard in a pretty high standing. Whether it's an 8 or higher, people are kind of really enjoy Evil Within. So I don't know if I missed something there, but I just could not get into it the first time around. But I do just need to give it another try. One of the second memories I wanted to share here, sticking with Resident Evil. At this time, after I beat Resident Evil 2, really loved it, and I was hooked. I was hooked from there. So of course I borrowed the first one from my neighbor, beat the first one. When 3 was available, I didn't get to play it right away. Resident Evil 3 was one I didn't beat until a few years ago, actually. Is when I finally beat the third one. That was kind of a black sheep for me, because I never did get it on the PS1. I actually had Code Veronica on the Dreamcast before I did anything with Resident Evil 3. So that was always the black sheep for me, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Because after beating 2, then beating 1, I went on to, I actually got a Dreamcast, I want to say the year that it came out, or a little bit after it came out, the Christmas season. And finally got one, got Sonic Adventure, and went right to the pawn shop, and one of the first games I got was Resident Evil Code Veronica when it was available, came out for it. And I loved Code Veronica. Now, that wasn't one that I played with a friend or anything, but it was just a solid Resident Evil game that I really enjoyed, and really lived up to what I thought was the Resident Evil name. The next Resident Evil game I would play would be, after that, Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Resident Evil 4. when this game was coming out, this is one of the first games that I ever did a pre-order for. One of the first games that I ever bought a strategy guide for. Like, I never did anything like that for any game. Something about, I remember seeing the previews in Game Informer magazine and such, just about how great it was supposed to be. There was all this hype for this game, and I was stoked. I was just excited. Except I ran into one of those pickles again. At the time, I did not have a GameCube. I had a PS2. And I had worked hard for that PS2. I had done a summer job with my uncle a couple years before, building houses, construction. And for a 15-year-old or 16-year-old doing that type of work, it's kind of weird. Like, I was doing some really hard manual labor. Learned a lot though, and made a lot of good money that summer. And the first thing I bought was I didn't even have money for lunch the next week for work. First thing I bought was a PlayStation 2, and I remember buying a WWE SmackDown game. That was one of the first things I ever got with my working money. And I loved that PS2. But Resident Evil 4 was not coming out on the PS2. At the time I had it, it was going to be GameCube only. So I was torn, because I mean, everything had a history of being on Sony for Resident Evil. So I was torn on what to do. I was like, I really want to play this game, but I don't have the money for it, because at this time I'm back at school. It's not summer, so I'm not working. How do I do this? So I ended up trading my PS2 in for the GameCube. I remember going to at that time, I believe it was called EB Games. It was not called GameStop yet down here during that time. So I go, trade in the PS2 to get the GameCube. I think I had to pay a couple extra bucks to make up the difference. And while I was there, I pre-ordered Resident Evil 4, and I got the strategy guide. And they were going to be doing a midnight release. I was there before midnight, because for some reason back in the day, when it came out, they didn't have to hold it till midnight. Like, the guy told me, be here at 10 o'clock and you can get your game. So it was around 9:30 I got there to get in line. 10 o'clock, got my game, got the strategy guide. Had my friends with me. So me and my friends, one of the main goals, they all wanted to see it. One of my best friends, Mr. Nice Guy, Demod, he wanted to, he was really wanting to watch the whole thing be played out. So what we did, we went to a friend's house, and that night sat there and played it for about 5 hours. He would hold the strategy guide while I played the game, and which might sound like a cheap way of playing through the game, but it was just amazing. Like, having my buddies there, we're playing Resident Evil 4, and he's just like reading stuff off to me to know where to go so I don't miss any items. And even with that, still one of the great gaming experiences I've ever had, like playing through that game for the first time. Now looking back on it and like comparing it to other games in the series, yeah, it's not my favorite, but at the time, I mean, people had this game Game of the Year awards left and right, winning stuff at award shows. It was the pinnacle of gaming, Resident Evil 4 at that time, even though it went through all the changes it went through. As far as the combat, which in a way, if you think about it, change wasn't too drastic. I mean, they came up with the over-the-shoulder deal that so many other games have used now, but it still was tank style. You still had to stop and shoot, and I always loved that because it created a sense of tension in the Resident Evil games, where if you have to stop and take aim at something as it's walking towards you, and you can't move while you're doing that, oh man, it just always created that tension of knowing when to stop and shoot or when to just run. Really good stuff. And I like how this game recognized limbs you would hit them in. If you shot them in the leg, they could get their legs taken out. Of course, headshots, blow it off. You could shoot the dynamite in people's hands and it'd blow them up. Really, really cool stuff. It's a game that I need to go back and play one of these HD versions I got, because I haven't played it since playing it on the GameCube. So it'd be something fun to relive and go back through. But it's one of those longer games, man, so it's tough to want to pop a game you already beat back in. That's so long. But I just remember really loving sitting there with my friends, reading it off as something's happening, or if I go through a death, because the death scenes in that game were pretty awesome. My friends seeing it, reacting to it, it was just really good stuff. And from there, anytime a Resident Evil would come out, of course I would be there and I would get it. And I've been a fan of that series, of course, everyone knows, ever since. Now, as far as other games that I kind of get into that are in the survival horror, or just, I don't know, because not every horror game is survival horror. There's different types. There's like walking simulator horrors. I'm really into these days stuff like Soma, Amnesia, those games, The Dark Descent. That's why I really enjoyed Echo Night Beyond for the most part, because these games really know how to create some atmosphere. You're just sitting there, especially when I played through Amnesia Dark Descent the first time. I mean, you're just walking through this castle and you have no way of defending yourself from this creature that you rarely even see. I know the first hour or two of the game, I never even seen the thing that's chasing me, and yet I still had all this tension and made sure I stayed away from it or I hid from it. And when you can do that, that's the making of a great horror game to me. Just the mechanics used in it, with light and exploring and the shivering when your character was scared in the game. I loved it. And then when Machine for Pigs came out, not as good, but still a good solid game. Then they came back with Soma, which I really enjoyed. Soma has a lot more talking in it than the other games, but really great story, really great world you're exploring down there. I love that game. So games of that nature. Then I had the Penumbra series on Steam, and I started playing the very first one. I believe it was Overture. I started playing that about a week or two ago, and even those games, I mean, the same formula, and even as early as that, same great atmosphere so far in that game. So those guys are really making, I forget, what's the developer's name? It's right on the tip of my tongue. Let's see, because I don't want to steer everybody wrong. Soma game. Frictional. How can I forget that? Frictional Games. Yeah. So they're making some good stuff, and I don't know what they got planned in the future, but definitely a company that I follow, and I really really enjoy everything they put out. So awesome stuff. But other than that, stuff like Outlast, I don't know. That's one of the most hailed games, it seems, of the past couple years. But I can't get into that stuff. Stuff like Slender Man, don't get into. It just doesn't hit the spot for me. It doesn't really create that atmosphere like I like. It's just like they're trying to do a lot of jump scares on you. I don't really like the camera mechanic with having the batteries and stuff for the camera, and it's one of those ones I just couldn't get into. So Outlast 2 will never happen. I just can't get into those. Other ones like that I need to play and finish are the Silent Hill series, Dustin's favorite horror franchise, I would say. I don't know, I tried playing the first one a couple years ago. I want to say I got close to the end, but I mean, people talk about Resident Evil's horrible controls back in the day. I thought that game controlled horribly like trash, so it was just tough trying to play through it. And I understand the graphics in it with the visuals of not being able to see too far in front of you. I mean, that creates a good like sense of, uh-oh, where should I go? But I wound up getting lost a lot in that game, like, okay, which way now? But it is one that I will go back and finish, because it isn't that long, so I just need to finish it and see it through, so I could play Silent Hill 2, which a lot of people say is tops, and it's up there on the charts as where as far as ranking horror games goes. So I really want to play that. I wanted to play the HD versions when those came out, but I heard there's a lot of glitches and just stuff wrong with those. That's never been patched, so we'll see how I play it, but I'll eventually one day get to that series and franchise. I remember buying Silent Hill for the Room on my Xbox back in the day, but never really did much in it. I remember I got stuck really early on in that game and just didn't care to play any more of it, so I traded it in. Other than that, I'm really into indie stuff. Like I've preached to you guys Lone Survivor so many times. Again, I own that game several different ways. I bought the limited run games version when it came out. It was a must buy for me. Jasper Byrne pretty much doing this game by himself, creating the soundtrack. It was just a great, just psychological survival horror game. I loved it. It's 2D style graphics, and just the story overall. The combat in it was pretty cool. The way you had to hide from enemies or attack. You could go through the whole game, I believe, not even killing anything, or you can kill everything you run into. Multiple endings. Really loved it. So again, if no one's played Lone Survivor, you gotta get on it. The Fear series is another one that I played through a few years ago. Really enjoy those if you want some action type of horror stuff. I could highly recommend those. So they have the bullet time effect. That was so much fun. Really enjoyed it. What's some more here? One that I really wanted to touch on. Condemned Criminal Origins. Boy, oh boy. One of the first games I had on my 360. You know, I went into that game not knowing much about it. I mean, I thought it was going to be this detective laying the smackdown on bad guys. And yeah, you lay the smackdown on them with your fist, with lead pipes, with 2x4s. The game is brutal when it comes to the combat, but the game is also really scary. It is one of those games that to this day has one of the most scariest moments I ever experienced in a game. Quick spoiler, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who's done it, but for the next 1 minute, just skip forward because it won't even take that long to talk about it. Talking about it in 3, 2, 1. There is an area in the game where you're walking to, and you enter it. Must be a store. It's been so long now. But there's a bunch of mannequins around the room. Like, okay, mannequins are kind of creepy looking all on their own. But then the lights go out and flicker, and then they come back on. All the mannequins are right in front of your face. That actually, that again, it scared the crap out of me. A lot of stuff does not scare me in life or in games in general, but that sent a shiver down my spine. I had to put the controller down again. I remember my roommates came in because they heard me yell at the time because I was living in an apartment with my buddies. They were like, "What happened?" And then they just saw the mannequins there, and I want to say the mannequins moved one more time after that scene, and it was just so spooky. Like it scared the heebies out of me. So really, really cool game. The sequel, not as good, but the first one just had a great combat system that was really upfront and brutal, putting you on your knees when like going into attack, almost like a BioShock feel. going in with your wrench or something to hit someone. But it was really, really, really cool. Highly recommend it. You're investigating crime scenes, but I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. So if you haven't played it, gotta give Condemned a try. Another one that I know a lot of people have played, Dead Space. Dead Space, coming out of nowhere when it did, it really knocked my socks off when it came out. It was a game I was not prepared for when it came out. I didn't hear much on it, wasn't keeping up with it. Visceral Games, who are they? Never heard of them. Then the reviews stopped popping out for it, and it's just getting these high marks everywhere. I'm like, what is this? Watch some gameplay of it. I'm like, okay, that looks freaky. Buy the game, and I am hooked in it. It combines two of my favorite things in gaming. I love the horror genre in games, and I love space, sci-fi, and this puts them together. I mean, it's a match made in heaven. It's perfect. So when I got it, it really caught me off guard of how good it was. Again, that third person over the camera look. You're not even using weapons. The main character is Isaac Clarke. He's an engineer. So you're using engineering tools to fight off these necromorphs on the space station. And these necromorphs are creepy looking. With their pin needle arms that can stab you, but you can break them off and shoot them back with abilities. Just really, really good stuff. A franchise that I had hoped would stick around like Resident Evil has, but of course, EA being the publisher, I mean, they got away with it the first time. They hit a gold mine. It was a diamond in the rough, the first Dead Space. Amazing. Dead Space 2 comes out, not as good, not horrible, but it's like once you start, the first game was so good because you had the silent Isaac. You didn't have all this talking. He's just quietly exploring the space station. You're hearing some audio logs, some video logs. Other than that, it's just so atmospheric with the music and the ambient tones. It was just great. Then Dead Space 2 comes around, loses some of that. And Dead Space 3 comes around. I've still yet to finish Dead Space 3. I always get halfway through it, and it is nothing like the first one. It's all action based, it feels, and it's all talky, and really takes away from the atmosphere. And I don't know who to blame for that. If it's Visceral and their design choices, or if it was EA saying, "Hey, we need to do this. We need to put more action in it. This is what needs to happen." And as we all know, recently, here a week ago or so, Visceral's gone. So the franchise that I had high hopes for, this was what Evil Within is to people now, with Shinji Mikami, and it being the reawakening of the horror genre. That's what Visceral did to me with Dead Space. Like, I thought that was it. This is the reawakening. This is it. This is where it's at. And I was really hoping to see this franchise just go on forever, like Resident Evil has. Every couple of years, just getting a new entry. And we were about at that time, because Dead Space 3 was, I believe, 2011? I can't remember. Or 2013? Let me look it up. Dead Space was 2011. What was Dead Space 3? Dead Space 3, 2013. So we were due, like it's 2017, like we were due for a Dead Space game. It's the next console generation. We need the next entry in the series. It needs to happen. Now, we never got it. I'm sorry, first Dead Space was 2008. Dead Space 2 was 2011. Dead Space 3 was 13. Now, I like that gap between the first one, 2008 to 2011. That's a good time to work on the second one, But yet the second one didn't live up to expectations. But 2011 to 2013, that seems like the issue there. Like for Dead Space 3, they rushed a little bit more on it, and you can tell, like, it just was not as good. So it stinks. I really wish that I really wanted to play another entry in that game, like restart it with a new character if you even need to, and just bring that atmosphere back in that setting. But hence it seems like we're not getting it. So, but again, if you haven't played any Dead Space, give it a play. It's amazing. And Dead Space Extraction on the Wii, really good light gun shooter game. It's the best light gun shooter game I've ever played. Not like I'll say that. It's amazing. The way they incorporate all these different type of elements in it, as far as getting collectibles and upgrading your weapons and your suit and stuff, really good stuff. So I highly recommend that if no one's ever played that one before. Other than that, there's so much I could ramble on about games, but this is supposed to be a short mini-sode. There's still some stuff I need to play. I've never really played anything in the Clock Tower series. Would love to dive into something like that. There's a bunch out there I still need to get into. Like I said, want to visit Evil Within. But I don't think the horror genre has to be based on those type of games, like with a gun. I think in a way, like Castlevania, that's a horror game, eh? I mean, it's got werewolves and zombies in it. It's just like action horror. And that's this franchise that I've grown to really love. Area of Sorrow being one of my favorite entries in that series. Just cool boss fights, cool monsters in it. And then the modern, like the 3D-esque Castlevania games we got going now that are taking over the globe, or the Soul series. To me, those all have aspects of horror games in them. Especially Bloodborne, with the atmosphere it creates, or with the setting that it's in. That's got horror genre written all over it. I mean, death could be around any corner. Again, you're fighting werewolves and all these crazy type of creatures with the Lovecraftian vibe you have in it. That is a horror game to me, just with action and adventure elements to it, RPG elements. I mean, it's great stuff. So I'd put that in the genre. Speaking of RPG horror games, Shadow Hearts, a series I still need to try to finish. I actually have, after beating Echo Knight Beyond, I brought Shadow Hearts out here to the PS2 to be the next game I put into it. But currently, the horror game I'm playing for the month is Prey. Like, that took a step back. And I put in Prey, and I mean, just early impressions for you guys. But, I mean, it is just, I'm loving it. It's a mix of System Shock, BioShock. It's got Half-Life elements into it. It's like all the great things and all these great games are in this game, and I am loving it. And again, space setting, horror, it is awesome. So whenever we do a full-on episode where we talk about games we've been playing recently or something, and I'll finish it, I can give you my final thoughts on it. But man, I'm really enjoying that one. So the horror genre is a genre that has many games in it these days. You can go on the indie market and stuff in Steam and probably find tons of underground stuff. But those are just some of the ones I wanted to hit on, to talk about a little bit, share some memories with Resident Evil. But other than that, I won't drag this on. This is, like I said, supposed to be like a mini solo-sode. If not, I could keep going on and reliving memories of other games, and it would go on for another hour or two. So, hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, hopefully there will be one more episode from one of our other co-hosts later on this month. We'll see how things are going with that. If not, maybe a full-on episode with all of us. We'll see. But there will be an actual full episode, hopefully in November, with all the hosts all back together again. Just to bring you another official episode of Another Gaming Podcast. Like I said, we've all been juggling a lot. Dustin with his new baby, me with my new baby, and work being crazy. Everyone's got something going on. But we do appreciate the patience you guys have given us, and hopefully you guys have enjoyed the content that we provided for this month in celebration of October. So till then, thanks for listening. Later. Hey everyone, I know I already said bye, but there is a series that for some reason I amazingly overlooked it, and it's a series that I hold in high regard. So I needed to say a quick word on it, just as a bonus as we go out here. Onimusha. Onimusha. Resident Evil Samurai. I mean, that's all I really have to say, but it's another franchise that I really love. Feudal Japan, cutting up the undead, cutting up these monsters. It's a series, again, I just wanted to say that I hold in high regards and let people know, I haven't forgotten about it. I'm one of those ones out here clamoring for the HD remasters and bring them all on one disc to the PS4, PC, your Xbox. Bring it to the Switch. Bring it everywhere, baby, because we want more Onimusha. And I hope and dream that one day we can get a new entry into that series, because there hasn't been an Onimusha game that has disappointed me. I've enjoyed all of them. So Capcom, make it happen. Bring us back our beloved Onimusha. And that's all I wanted to say. Okay, I'm out, guys. Bye.